Rupert Friend, you play Peter Quinn in Homeland, and you've been with the show since season two, but it feels like this past fourth season that aired last fall was when we really got to know Quinn a lot better. Did you feel that that's the same way when reading the scripts and filming last year?
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny business television shows because they unfold sort of in real time for us as well. It's not like we get a kind of sense of what's going to happen at the beginning. So it's frankly as much of a surprise for me as it is for you guys when we get the script. But it's always a pleasure to get them because they're so well written. So I was following it very avidly as a written thing.
Is how far in advance do you usually get the scripts, or do you know what storyline is coming forward? Like if there's a major plot development for your character, is that something you'll find out when you read it, or will you get a heads up beforehand?
No, I pretty much find out when I read it, and as we go along, and the deadlines start getting tighter, it can be a few days before we shoot it. So it's a little bit like a kind of cooking show where you're thrown six ingredients and told to make something.
And with a show like Homeland being this spy thriller where we can never be entirely sure like who's going to live, who's going to die, and when, is that the sort of thing? If you're reading the script and you're worried that on the next page suddenly Quinn gets a bullet between the eyes or something?
It's always a possibility with this show, and I trust the people who make it to always tell the most interesting, unobvious, exciting story they can. And if that includes Quinn being found in the bottom of a ditch, then I'm totally behind them doing that.
We were first introduced to Quinn as this sort of hardened assassin in season two. Very mysterious and kind of dark. But as we've learned more about him, we've gotten to see he has a strong moral code. Do you think of him now at this point as sort of one of the moral compasses of the show?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think everybody in the show, every character in the show, necessarily is quite flawed. Because that tends to be what makes for good drama. If everybody's just kind of nice, it's not really a show. It's just kind of a documentary about nice people not really doing anything. It's sort of, you could call it, I don't know, suburban picnic rather than spy thriller. So for me, the flaws are where it gets interesting with human beings. We're none of us perfect, and Quinn definitely has a lot of demons, as you know, and as you pointed out. And yet, underneath all that, I think there's a very strong sense of right and wrong. And when it gets offended, he takes action in a way that is sometimes a little bit disproportionate, but it's coming from a good place.
Season four in general, not just for your character, was kind of a reinvention for the show. The Nicholas Brody storyline ended, after season three, and then the show moved the setting to Pakistan. What did you think about undertaking those big story changes? Was it a little bit nerve-wracking for the show to sort of change in such a big fundamental ways like that?
Yeah, I mean, Brody was such a beloved character by people who make the show, by us lot, and also I know by everybody who watches it. So we were very sad to see him go, but Damien is a great actor and a great guy, and I also think he has the same feeling about story that I do, which is that the story has to change and evolve if it's going to keep going. And this show is based on on an Israeli version of the same kind of notion of the first season, but after the first season, it really went in its own direction, and that I think is exciting. It's not, it's not following a set of books that's already been written. It's not following, any kind of dictum as to where it goes. So really, it's limitless as to the turns it can take. And I think with something like this, it really comes alive when the creators feel that there are no rules and they can break whatever rules there are, and they can take as many turns and twists as they want. That's what's exciting for them. It's what's exciting for us, and I hope it's what's exciting for the viewers.
Season three, season four, say another big change was not only the setting moved, but the filming location moved to South Africa. How did that change affect the experience of the show, like shooting it for you?
Well, the crazy thing was we were shooting Kabul and Islamabad and Washington, all in Cape Town, South Africa. So we've never shot, until now, we've never shot this show where it's set. We shot North Carolina for Washington and for various parts of the Middle East, and then it was South Africa for the places I mentioned. Now it's Berlin for Berlin, which is where we are now. So, Cape Town, I'd never been there before, and it's a very majestic place, to the bottom of the world in some respects. And if you have any interest in early shipping or piracy or trade routes, the Cape, the Horn, all those kinds of things are very mythic and legendary. And I grew up with those kinds of stories and of boats being wrecked on that kind of bit of coastline. So for me, that combined with this beautiful mountain range, the 12 Apostles, combined with this incredible coastline, I found it a very naturally breathtaking place. And then the bizarre thing is, of course, you turn up at work and they've turned the whole place into, a Pakistani street market, which is just bizarre, with the Pakistani with South African accents.
As you mentioned, the show for the next season, season five, is shooting in Berlin. What has that change of scenery been like?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Daniel. I got off a plane this morning, so for me, I feel a little bit upside down. But so far, it's been going really well, from what everyone tells me. It's great, I think, to be able to shoot and know that. Well, like I say, when we were in South Africa, you'd be pointing at your Pakistani street market, and just to the right would be Table Mountain, which obviously you couldn't shoot. So I think for everybody to feel the freedom that wherever you go, you're going to be in Berlin. And so we can really shoot anywhere, and have been. And I think that's quite liberating for the crew as much as anything else.
On the show over the seasons, the relationship between your character Quinn and Carrie Mathison, played by Claire Danes, has evolved. It started out kind of chilly in the beginning, but they got closer, and by the end of season four, it looked like a romance was starting to develop between them. What do you think about how that relationship has evolved on the show over the course of your run?
Well, I think the important thing to remember is that the thing that happens at the very end of season four, which is that it's about as far as he goes into vulnerability, and she's not ready for him. She's not available to him, and his response is war, which is quite an extreme response. I think there's many of us have tried to phone somebody we're interested in, and we haven't necessarily thrown ourselves into a suicide mission. So he's clearly vulnerable person, is what I thought was fascinating about that. For all the tough man stuff, really a very sensitive core inside that couldn't deal with any kind of level of rejection, and that tells me quite a lot about the guy.
There are times on the show when Quinn seems to think Carrie is a little cold and calculating at times, but there are also times where she has to talk Quinn down when he loses his cool, especially towards the end of last season. Do you think they're well matched for each other, or do you think maybe they both come with too much baggage?
I think that professionally they are a good foil for one another. As you said, they both get hot-headed in certain situations and frankly won't listen to anyone else. So in that respect, I think they respect one another. They're possibly the only one the other one will listen to the trigger moment. And we've seen them both in pull the trigger moments having to be talked on or off a ledge. But I don't necessarily think that for a good relationship makes.
The show, The show in general involves a lot of action and a lot of it involving your character. In last season, of course, there's that big siege at the American embassy. Tell me about what shooting that episode was like. Was that especially complex episode? Physical to shoot.
Uh, yeah, I mean, it was kind of like they all are, frankly, which is, morning, go for it. It's basically how we go. Uh, I tend to do as much as I can, short of, jumping off a building. I like to do everything. And that means, I think, again, freedom for the camera, because you don't have to kind of pretend it's me by shooting the back of a stunt. And so I find that very liberating. I think viewers can smell the difference between actors who kind of wait in their trailer while the stuntman does it, or enjoyable, it's realer. And I think the way a character takes out a room full of hostages is, to me, as interesting as the way a character drinks a cup or says good morning or puts on a shirt. They're all part of what's interesting, and I don't want to sort of sit out for any of that. So I was very glad to be involved to the fullest degree.
In addition to a lot of that intense material, in Pakistan, you also got to explore the personal side of Quinn back in the United States, including, this brief relationship he forms with the manager of his motel. What was it like getting to know Quinn, sort of outside of the CIA and in this quieter, more intimate context?
Well, I mean, he was drunk for most of it, so it's kind of like. Yeah, it's sort of like all or nothing with this guy, isn't it? Like, if he's not taking out terrorists, he's looking through the bottom of the fifth of scotch, And again, there's a part of me that is very worried about him, and I'd kind of like to take him for a beer, but I don't know how that would end up. It might go like we might drink the bar dry and break it.
When you first joined the show in season 2, you were a recurring guest star, and you were nominated for an Emmy for best guest actor in a drama series. What was that whole experience like? Did that take you by surprise?
Yeah, and when it first happened, it was very early in the morning in Italy, and we were in North Carolina. My agent got it wrong. So he phoned up and said, "You've been nominated for an Emmy." And I sort of, opened the champagne, was like, woohoo. And then he phoned back and said, "Sorry, dude, sorry, I mean you all, as a cast, sorry." So sort of like half put the cork back in, I had a bit. And then he phoned back and went, "Sorry, man, it's really early. I mean, yeah, you have actually personally as well." It was thrilling. I'd never done a television show before, and then I do this one, and it's a fantastic character, a fantastic show, and I get this nomination. I was very proud. I felt very proud, very proud. Yeah.
In addition to acting, your acting career, you also wrote and directed a short film not too long ago called Steve. That was in 2010. Having had experience behind the camera as a writer and director, does that influence or inform the work you do as an actor since then?
Yeah, massively. It was the most amazing professional experience of my life. I absolutely loved it. I loved working with the entire crew that closely. As an actor, sometimes you're sheltered deliberately or otherwise from, for example, when they're lighting, they don't tend to involve you for fairly obvious reasons. When they're choosing the locations, they're not involving you. When they're building the sets, when they're editing, and that's fine because it's not your job. But I love being a part of as much as possible because I'm interested in all of it. And so I was never not interested, but it just enhanced my appreciation for what everybody who make television and film productions does and everything that they contribute, how valuable it is, how fascinating it is to me. And it was an experience second to none in my professional life.
Do you have any, plans or aspirations to do any more directing, like maybe even on Homeland, like now that you've gotten to know this world and this cast and crew so well?
Well, I'm going to direct a feature film that I wrote, and that'll be at the end of this year, beginning of next year, called Barton and Charlie and Checo and Bill, which is about con artists, which is another kind of big favorite passion of mine. But I no, I mean, they haven't asked me to direct any Homeland, so I would cross that bridge if I was asked, for sure. But I'll be behind the camera again.
Yeah, do you think of yourself, is that something where, you sort of feel like primarily still an actor, or is, writing and directing, this passion something that you feel like is going to become sort of, your primary love?
I think my dream when I was young was to not have to choose, pretty much ever. If I want to be a sort of yachtsman and lumberjack and an actor and a director and a writer and a lyricist, and then I will. So I like the idea that you can do all of that, and fly to the moon and write.
Well, I want to, thank you very much for talking with me today, and congratulate you on the past several seasons of Homeland, and I wish you much more world travel with this show going forward.
Thank you very much. It's great to speak with you.